So once again, welcome, and let's see how we are. I'm going to introduce you first, Ursula.
Yes.
Or better said, please take turns and introduce yourself.
Yes, so the left one is me. Picture, Ursula Brinkman. My background is in psychology, and now I'm also working as Yvonne, of course, in the intercultural field as an intercultural professional these days. I have two roots which I'm very fond of, psychology and linguistics, and both come back together like silver mines in the intercultural field. So that's always really just very, very interesting. And I love seeing the psychological aspects and the linguistic aspects in the intercultural field. So I love that. And by the way, I started I'm German. I've been living in the Netherlands for many years. And my life in the Netherlands started in Nijmegen. There's a German research institute, and I was lucky enough to be able to work there for several years. So whenever I'm near Nijmegen, I feel like I'm back home. I've been now also in the field, intercultural field, for quite some while. Oscar, my partner in work and crime, we've published a book together a couple of years ago, Intercultural Competencies, Intercultural Readiness, 4 competencies for working across cultures. Also part of a European project, which might be of interest to several of you. And please get in touch with Yvonne or myself afterwards if you want to know more about it. I also have a request. And I'm working on another project on professional standards for the intercultural profession. That's all about me. Thanks very much. Yvonne.
Yeah, well, thanks, Ursula, for introducing yourself. Let me also introduce myself before we hand over to you, because we also feel it's important, even in those webinars, pop-up meetings, to have a moment of connection. So we'll come to that soon. And in the meantime, a couple of additional participants enjoyed or came into the session. So welcome here. My name is Yvonne van der Poel, based in the Netherlands, working internationally, well, as long as I can remember, actually, after my studies in development sociology. First, I worked in the field of international development cooperation, and it's, well, over 15 years now that I work as an intercultural trainer. And a couple of years ago, I published my book, Reflections on Intercultural Craftsmanship. I'm also very active in the Society for Intercultural Education, Training and Research, and I'm a board member in CITAR Europe. And 2 months ago, to my own surprise, actually, I became interim president of CITAR Netherlands. And we have a new strategy, and interim is really meant as interim, because in the new strategy, we aim for more diversity within our group. So I'm keen for looking for candidates, a person of color, and we have many people in our fields with multicultural backgrounds. So we will look forward to meet them in our organizations. And let me continue with this piece. Hang on. This is the program. Ursula, you want to say a bit about that? You're muted right now.
Sorry. I just wrote in the chat that these webinar is being recorded for the newcomers, so that they know this and can decide accordingly. Well, we have yes, connecting. You already mentioned that. We want you to also meet each other, to get to know each other, to have a personal connection for at least, for the time of the breakout rooms. That's part of intercultural effectiveness, also to connect to one another. And we're going to look then at, from a content perspective, we're going to look at some of the key challenges when we are now working together online, like now with these Zooms and these squares we're looking at, and internet connections, etc. So what are the challenges as such, communicating like this and what are the challenges when we look at that from an intercultural perspective. We have been gathering through conversations with colleagues from various cultures, through literature reviews, etc. We've been distilling the most important aspects. In particular, we're going to look at the great equalizer hypothesis. More about that later, of course. And we will also then invite you to exchange with each other in the breakout rooms. We've all been now in this extraordinary situation for several weeks. So we all feel what it means to be in video connections all day long. So please exchange there as well. And there's also further learning afterwards. There's going to be resources. Yvonne, you put together 3 amazing Symbolus, which are collections of online resources. And of course, you can also contact us. We look forward to hearing from you. Yes, absolutely. Yvonne, over to you.
Well, thank you. Before we sort of open the floor and enter with the connection, we thought we start to share something with our vision on learning. And because we are trainers, we work in the learning field, and it's important to know, where do we come from? And well, here are 3 numbers, 70, 20, 10, and that's very valid for us. And there's one person here present, Joitske, and this is just her second nature. Actually, she was my teacher in getting to know, well, the concepts that I'm presenting here right now. And it's interesting, 70% of all the learning experiences we learn through our work, and especially challenging work. And I just said something that I've taken up the position of interim president of CETA Netherlands. And that has been a steep learning curve in a sense, because all of a sudden you're in the midst of this organization with a new strategy, etc. So that's where I had a lot of learning within a couple of months. And of course, I exchanged with my colleague, board members, but also with Ursula, who was past president, etc., about, well, just for reflection. And maybe in these couple of months that I've had this position, I looked up a couple of details on information and on how to run volunteer organization. So yes, I Googled and I found some sources that were very insightful. And this is actually the 70, the 20, and the 10%. We learn a lot from practice and from peer-to-peer coaching. And yes, there's also formal settings, sources, education, trainings that are very valid. The ones of you who are present here and are trainers or educators, usually we start the other way around, because that's what we do, we do those trainings. So our 10%, we sort of blow it up, well, maybe to 80% or 100, or so it will be interesting to sort of flip the classroom or have another idea about how to do this, Can you sort of blend things in ways that it becomes very beneficial learning for your participant? And actually now in the times of COVID-19, it's completely online. And of course, a couple of classroom sessions are sort of maybe coming back. We don't know, a second wave of COVID. So probably we're going to be online for quite a while.
Yes, indeed, indeed. And that's why we thought it would also be of interest to you to learn about some of the options for delivering learning interventions. One of them is what's called a SPOC. I love that abbreviation. It's a short form for Small Private Online Course. You all have heard of the MOOCs, of course, the massive open online courses. This is the small compact version of that. So it's for dedicated groups. And we've developed one that lasts 10 days. It has a beginning and an end, as Yvonne, you always said. And it's completely asynchronous. So people we never have a webinar like this, which is synchronous, but people meet each other online. They can read each other's comments. Each day has a different topic. It's focused around 4 competencies, intercultural competencies. You'll see them also later on. And it's really like a learning journey that we're taking participants through. And it's kind of like we are really facilitating this. We are facilitating the peer-to-peer learning and coaching. These people come from all over the world, and they have insider knowledge from the local circumstances. They all come from the same organization. They can help each other much more specifically in terms of the cultural know-how than we could do this. But we need to have the skills to encourage them to share. So also how you give feedback on their comments is really an art. So it's something that we consciously developed and thought about in order to not put people off, but still give content, etc. So it was really very, very interesting. And it's still very interesting. It's just, we just finished the last edition. And people can immediately apply it to the work context. So that's the SPOC. That's one of the pure online programs we've been developing and have been delivering now already, I think, for 3 years, Yvonne?
Yeah, something like that.
Yes.
Many of you are also delivering webinars, and we have become very, well, how to say it, fluid in it. I think that's valid for many. And also about webinars, you know, you have these moments like we have today, that you really meet face to face. Well, let's put it face to face. At the very same moment, you are together. So that's different from a complete online program as Ursula just described. And but how do you run webinar programs? Are they sort of standalones, and is it 2 or 3 in a row? Or do you sort of blend those webinars together, those moments that you're live together, combined with, well, again, the 20 and the 70%. And for various organizations, clients, we do webinar programs, I think like many of you right now. And for instance, what we do is always have individual intake conversation with people and set individual learning goals. And in our case, on the intercultural field, diversity and inclusion. Then we sort of look at their learning goals and create subgroups of participants and give them additional tasks in the period of time that we work together. For instance, well, we have very different formats, but for instance, 3 webinars in a 2-month time span. You know, that in between the 3-4 weeks in between, people also meet in smaller groups. There's individual learning, there's subgroup learning, we have an online learning management system. And so you sort of, well, it's really like sort of blending a couple of learning methods together in order to have it more beneficial and let it run as a catalyst. Well, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed connecting and finding these similarities. And those are the moments we always feel, you know, sometimes Zoom or the webinars gets a little bit attached from people, you know, that's what you do, and you start at 11:30, you finish at 12:30. But how to connect and how to make human connections, and also over time, you know. So those are the challenges we face, and actually we face online challenges as such in monocultural settings, but there's a lot of additional intercultural challenges. Ursula, can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yes, absolutely. What comes out as one of the most important aspects to take into account for this online intercultural stuff is the role of our status differences. And we're going to look at that in more detail later on. As you all know, cultures differ in terms of how important status differences are for them. And I always love the example from Thailand, where until just recently, a couple of years ago, there was a point-by-point system. Everyone in society got a certain amount of points. The emperor had 100,000 points, and farmers, they had 5 points. So they had the lowest rank, but even then, you know, they wouldn't have just 1 point, they got 5 points. So that is really kind of like prescribed, and I have, there are pages and pages of titles you need to know about, etc. So status differences, and how would this play out if these people would meet with their counterparts in a video meeting like we are meeting now. Then also different communication styles, and Yvonne, you always remind me of the one that if people are starting to unmute themselves, you know, so they want to say something. There are different communication styles. We're going to look at that also in more detail later on. And importantly, what's the dynamic in these online meetings? And does this dynamic allow us to look into explore all perspectives? Or is this
Exactly.
working against this exploration? Yes, yes.
Well, what happens in, well, all those video calls and webinars, we say it's the great equalizer. And well, here you see a screenshot, and it was shared on social media, so I know that I can share it with you today. It was actually the General Assembly of CITAR Europe last week. And we didn't have only one page of this, but we had 60 participants there. So that was really great. But that, what you see, who are these people? You know, here you see 25 faces. Today we have 19 participants here. So we see all these faces, but well, just as Ursula said, the status thing, well, for instance, in Thailand, but who is the leader? Who should be, you know, talking first, for instance? So this is the great equalizer, Zoom is, because all the screens are in the same size. And we can just unmute ourselves or raise our hands with this icon and speak up. But
Claude, ils sont là. Tu peux ouvrir? Claude?
Oui, oui. Okay.
You say? What, Corina?
Yeah, I just muted her. Yeah. So, and that's exactly what it is, you know, we can just jump in, and it's actually, if you look at it from a cultural lens, Zoom is based, and many webinars tools, on individualistic cultural assumptions and also low power assumptions. It's all about, you know, we're being equals, we just jump in and we don't deal a lot with status or with groups or, you know, those kind of things.
Yes, yes, exactly. If you can go one down, the animation there, the Sontaku sign.
I have Sontaku on. Do you see it?
No, one more. I don't see it.
There you go.
Yeah, exactly. There it is. Yes. So, and then we were alerted to this phenomenon by Rika Asaoka, our Japanese colleague. She's been living in Perth for now. She's part of the IBI team. She spoke to one of her Japanese clients and asked, so how are you doing? And he said, well, so I'm all right in the lockdown. However, with all these video meetings, I don't know. And it turned out that what he is missing is what in Japanese culture is called the sontaku. And that is kind of like you could translate this as the mixture of to consider and the degree. So there are status differences in a meeting, and the one with the most status has the most leverage, the most impact, deserves the most respect. So we need to take him or his or her opinions and responses into account. Now this is all arranged in subtle ways, non-verbally, in a normal meeting, where this whole behavior evolved, of course, in a face-to-face meeting. So the boss would sit at a certain position, people, you know, would be aligned around him in decreasing order of status. And yeah, exactly. So Marianne, apparently in Japan, they're now figuring out whose camera should show where on the screen. I read that yesterday as well, yes. That they're kind of like, so can I have a bigger screen? And the thing is here that those who are kind of like in lower position, they have learned to observe the one in higher position. If they are kind of like saying something that comes close to a proposal, or if a proposal is being made, they are observing the facial responses of the boss. And very subtly, he or she will indicate whether it's okay or not. But in these small screens, you don't see this. For example, Renee, if you were the boss now, I would not see whether you're raising your left eyebrow. So I don't know what you think of this proposal. And so that is often these high power cultures go paired with very subtle non-verbal communication, because they are also face preserving cultures. So you do a lot in the non-verbal domain to preserve face. If you have to go on record, if you have to become explicit, it's costs too much face. Yvonne.
Yeah. Sorry, I clicked too early. And actually, this is a nice moment
Yes.
about saving face, but also about taking turns, because that's also something, you know, in a regular, and then I also mentioned and face-to-face context, when we are two partners in a conversation, we take turns. And how do we exactly do that? At the moment that I end my sentence, and you know, where do you sort of jump in? Is it already during the last word, or do you just have a full dot, a moment of silence like this one, and then the speaker, the next one, starts in, you know, so there's really this moment of silence? Or do we sort of talk in between, you know? And well, you can feel also online in the Zoom, it will be quite, well, a buzz then. And this is also something, this happens interculturally. And there's more cultures who are more talkative and sort of turn taking, and it goes really speed up. And there are also those cultural logics and patterns that allow for more time in between. Silence is appreciated. And so you can imagine in all those video tools and conference we use, this is also because first, well, as you see now, we have to unmute ourselves, and who speaks up then and who doesn't, and how long do you wait? And if you take turns, do I need to wait another second and then Ursula jumps in or not? And what about the other people here present? So it's all those moments that sort of, we need to be additionally aware of how we do it. And then this is, well, for the ones of you who work interculturally, very familiar, you know, how do we wrap messages? A couple of people are very direct. How they sort of set up their message is they start from the middle. They say right away, I have time from 1 to 2, you know, because afterwards I have to go here, there, and before I'm also in meetings. Other people, more on the left-hand side, they're spiraling from the outside to the inside. The children are home today because of the homeschooling system has finished, but now we're sort of partially homeschooling, and the other days. And during lunchtime, we are lunching together. And it's a long story short, to sort of work towards this moment that between 1 and 2 it will be the only moment today that there is an opportunity to, well, sort of do some work, for instance. But then do we allow for the time in those webinars for actually really listening to indirect communicators? And here again, it seems that those webinar tools are more allocated or made for people who are the direct communicators, the task-oriented ones, and less for the ones who sort of need more time and also wrap messages in indirect ways. And also that's related to high context. You need more information first before you continue.